Hi and welcome to the Homeopathy Health Show. I'm Atiq Ahmed Bhatti, a fourth generation homeopath with over 25 years of professional experience and practice in this field of healing. The Homeopathy Health Show is the online voice of homeopathy around the world, promoting and raising awareness of this truly unique system of healing, which is suitable for all ages, young and old. Every week I invite guests from the world of homeopathy to come and share their experiences, their work, offer insights, and essentially talk all things homeopathy. Why not visit www.liketreatslike.co.uk and click on the radio and podcast button to listen to the latest episodes. So let's begin today's show here on UK Health Radio, the world's #1 talk health radio. Hi and welcome to another episode of the Homeopathy Health Show here on the UK Health Radio Network. And of course, I'm your host, Atiq Ahmed Bhatti. Now, the Homeopathy Health Show is the voice of homeopathy on radio and podcast, so do remember to follow and subscribe. You can find the show on UK Health Radio, on all the podcast platforms, and of course through my Instagram and YouTube accounts, which are like_treatslike. And here actually you'll find exclusive clips, episode trailers, and much, much more. Now, exciting times. My guests on today's show are indeed inspiring, and I truly mean that. I have termed them both as the intellectual duo, but I was thinking about this and I thought maybe I could just call them dynamic duo, kinetic duo, inspirational duo even, or strange, rare, and peculiar duo. And that's only because they're not actually strange, rare, or peculiar. Well, actually, they could be rare.
I think they are.
Yeah, a little bit. Just a little bit.
But I think it's to do with their podcast, which is actually called Strange, Rare, and Peculiar. Now, I'm joined by Denise Straiges, who is committed to raising the bar in academic and clinical training for all homeopaths. Denise is actually the president and clinical director of the Academy of Homeopathy Education, which is the AHE in the United States, and established the Home Foundation, whose initiatives include the Homeopathy Health Network, a not-for-profit research-based initiative focused on delivering high-quality, affordable homeopathy care for all. How amazing is that, eh? Now, under Denise's leadership, AHE was named exclusive educational provider for the American Institute of Homeopathy, which is the oldest medical society in the US. And there is so much more because Denise in 2023 graduated from Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine. So, do you know what? I feel like a student here. I feel really, really small for some reason. And we haven't even moved on to Alastair yet. So here goes. Brace yourselves. So joining Denise is Alastair Gray, who has a PhD in the field of public health. God, I'm so unqualified. More specifically, he is an expert in the intersection of traditional complementary and integrative medicine, which is often referred to as TCIM. Alastair is actually the research director at the Home Foundation and teaches at and heads the academic, operations, and technology departments at the Academy of Homeopathy Education. And in addition, he holds various consulting roles. Both Denise and Alastair also present a podcast, Strange, Rare, and Peculiar. So, without further ado, Denise and Alastair, welcome to the Homeopathy Health Show with open arms and my autograph book.
Thank you for having us.
That's hilarious. Yeah.
Good to be here.
Yeah, nice.
This is great. It's so nice to see you. Thank you. Big honor for me to get you on the show to talk about you and to talk about the incredible work that you're doing. And so, hey, let's dive straight in. Firstly, actually, congratulations on introducing Homeopathy, the film. I know you are both featured and have been very, very actively involved in it. And how's that experience been, actually?
Yeah, it's been pretty amazing. I have to reveal that for those who have seen the movie, Alastair is the one dressed up in the Hahnemann costume, and I'm in the Melanie costume. And they filmed those parts, the 18th century and 19th century part. Well, actually, it would be the 19th century parts in our library. Yeah. That was pretty fun. But Alastair in the Hahnemann costume is a sight to behold.
It was
Yeah,
brilliant. When I saw that, I got so happy because I said, I know him. I know him. It says it's the Hahnemann. No, I said, I know Hahnemann, but I mean, I physically know Alastair.
yeah. There's this, I mean, obviously we've got the big guy behind us in the middle, but when I get that wig on,
Oh my
it's start to channel my inner, 19th century angry German physician, then it's nothing will stop me.
It's brilliant. It really was actually a very important part, I think, of the film, to have that there. And hey, respect to you for being able to do that. Brilliant.
It's really interesting you say that, because I mean, I must admit I was a bit concerned. I thought, just like, really? And then because we talk for a living and we do homeopathy and nothing else, and we got plenty to say. And at the end of the day, I think, we probably had about, I don't know, 30 seconds of dialogue.
But we were in the costumes.
Yeah.
I kind of like the costume. I mean, I like a good costume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got a serious big bin down in the basement full of wigs.
Mhm.
And when if we had a bad day, or the students are revolting or whatever they're doing, sometimes we turn on the music and
Put on a wig.
get a wig on.
Yeah.
You should put on a pink wig and walk into the classroom and see what happens.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Oh, what lecture is that one?
Really, that's
Yeah.
interesting. To divide our wigs by remedy type.
I've got a I've totally forgot. Lead singer for Led Zeppelin. Just totally left my memory. Who was that?
Oh, now
Oh my
you
God,
really remember-
we got
No,
Robert
remember-
Plant. Okay.
Plant.
Yeah, I do
Yes.
do a good Robert Plant wig. Not the voice, but definitely the wig. Yeah.
Nice. I can just picture you in that actually now. That's why I'm staring at you. But hey, we must
Try to
move
get
on.
it out of your mind. Do your
Okay,
best. Get it out of your mind.
move on.
Cleanser.
Yeah.
Something I ask all my guests is their journey to homeopathy, and I found it makes such a big difference to those listening from around the world to the show. Stories always inspire, and I'm going to ask the same from both of yourselves. Do share what led you or what attracted you to homeopathy.
Have you interviewed Jeff Johnson?
Jeff, yes, absolutely,
Yeah.
of course, yes.
Yeah. He stole my story. And I actually have confronted him on a number of occasions about it, usually over a lot of beer, because we fight because he's a mad English rugby fanatic. And I'm originally from New Zealand, so you can just tell that things get ugly.
Jeff reminds me of Charlton Heston. I've told him that.
Oh, wow.
He does, doesn't he?
I like that.
Okay.
Get a little 10 Commandments vibe.
I've told him. I said, Jeff, why do you look like Charlton Heston? He said, I don't know.
Well, anyway, he stole my story because it's parallel. I was miserable, cold, and depressed in the south of New Zealand.
That's really picked up this podcast. Thanks for coming on. And
there you go.
talk to you soon.
As a young man, and I'd found homeopathy early in my early 20s, and I had this experience where I'd had really miserable hay fever for pretty much, I'd say, 2/3 of my life. And look, long story short, saw this crazy woman, homeopath, who asked a whole lot of irrelevant and intrusive questions. And I just about drove off the road, heading home, because I had a massive sneezing attack. And to this day, even though I do sneeze every now and again, I don't have the irritation or the pollen sensitivity or that grumpiness or the dryness and all of that stuff that plagued me for years and years and years. And so I just, at that time I was, did I mention sad, miserable, and depressed? And
Yes,
okay, we got over that one.
Yeah, twice.
So
Hey, thanks for coming on again then.
Yeah, no worries. So guess what I did? I did some research back in the day before internet and mobile phones. So in the Carter administration. No, it wasn't. It was in the
Clinton.
No,
it was
Bush Senior. Yeah.
Bush.
Bush.
If you're doing your timelines by American politics.
Anyway, late 80s. And I managed to ring and talk to Misha Norland. And then I went, you're the one. So I packed up my gear and I left New Zealand and moved to Bristol. There you go.
Amazing. It's interesting you said that. Just a few months back, I was at the School of Homeopathy with Manny Norland, and we did actually an exclusive. We did a walk and talk, a tour through the school, and that was nice. And actually, Peter Terminello was delivering a lecture on gems.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
So
Peter and I know each other really well.
I love Peter.
It was really nice. And So tell me about what happened thereafter then. You went to the school and
Well, I just thought that that was such a visceral, crazy, intense experience. And of course, probably in the same way that people would these days, I just had a look around the local library and thought, oh my God, something clicked. I had a degree in history. I was not working in that field. Did I mean no? And
Here we
so
go again.
something just went, this is the time, and I've got to go. There's a bit of tubercular in me, and so I found myself in the green fields of Devon, and
wow,
living in Bath, and then in Bristol, and then and had the best 3.5 years. I did my first year by correspondence back in the day, and then moved to southwest of England and loved it. I'd lived in England before, uh, and then I suppose the other part of it, which is important, is I realized that this was me. There's nothing else, and I went in boots and all. You know that expression?
Yeah.
It's a rugby expression. Full throttle, the whole ham, as they say over here.
hmm,
Mm.
wonderful. And where are you residing now at the moment?
We're in the birthplace of American homeopathy.
Yeah.
We're at Philadelphia. Yeah.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah. So there's a lot here. I mean, just briefly, shall we mention?
Yeah.
Like
Yes, absolutely.
the Allentown Academy, the first ever school of homeopathy, is up the road, 20 miles. The Philadelphia, obviously the first that institution folded pretty quickly, but the school and then the second school that was run by Hering and Lippy
Yeah.
is a couple of miles away. And of course the Drexel Archives, which houses all of the Hahnemann Hospital. Up until 2 years ago, there was a hospital in the city that had Hahnemann Hospital in big lights.
Yeah.
It was inspirational to drive through the city.
Yeah.
It really is incredible. And a lot of that's due to Hering and Lippy, and Vesselhoft and some of the old guys.
Wow. That's so much history, isn't it? That's
Oh my
so
God.
much. It's actually very
really is.
inspiring.
It's amazing to be here. I mean, I did most of my research for my thesis just 3 miles away where the archives are. So all of Hering's correspondence is there, the journals, all the homeopathy journals, and then maybe 10 miles from here is a Swedenborg community where Kent was. And actually, the midwife that I had for my second child is a homeopath in the lineage of Kent, and lives in the community where Kent was for a time.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's pretty amazing.
That's actually really exciting. You've told me that.
Yeah.
I love stuff like that. Absolutely
Yeah.
love it,
And kind of parallel, Boiron, the American head office for Boiron, and also Standard. I mean, Standard have now left.
Yeah.
But Standard Homeopathics, which was a
here.
giant name. And
Boerick and Taffel
Yeah.
was here. All the printers that printed the homeopathic literature, the first homeopathic hospital was here. And actually some other connections. Julian Winston
yeah,
lived here in
he was born.
Philadelphia. He was born. He wasn't born here,
No.
but he lived here.
He lived in a
He
firehouse.
lived in a firehouse with his amazing library, and then he moved to New Zealand, and then
That's when I met him.
yeah, and,
1998.
and actually you were there when he died.
Yeah, I was.
And so it's interesting that Julian moved from Philadelphia to New Zealand, and then Alastair from New Zealand to Philadelphia. And Julian's library has made its way through multiple iterations. And what did not go to the Drexel archives, anything they didn't have went there. Everything else that was a duplicate came here, because we have this library that's open for students and historians and researchers that want to have access to some of these materials. Like 100 and I think we have 120 linear feet of antiquarian homeopathy books, like you have. We talked about that the last time when we spoke. Yeah, all of your family's books. Yeah,
but I'm quite sure you've got much more than me. I'm quite sure of it. I have a question for you, actually, just before we go to yourself, Denise, and your story. As far as lineage is concerned, because I'm really interested in that. So Hering and Kent and Lippe and others, is there a can we find out living descendants? I mean, do you know them? Have you met them? Have you bumped into them? And are they aware of their forefathers as such? Are they aware?
It's really interesting you say that. I mean, there's the paraphernalia of they're living here. There's that.
Right. And
There's
we go to the cemetery.
the cemeteries.
We go visit Hering on his birthday, or well, not on his birthday. He was born New Year's Day. We've never gone on his birthday.
No.
We've gone on the anniversary of his death.
Cold.
We take when homeopaths come to visit, we take them to see Hering's grave and Lippy's grave. And people should know Hering is in an amazing spot.
Oh, wow.
It's maybe 4 miles from us. Beautiful rolling hills, deer. It's gorgeous. They got him a new headstone and everything. Poor Lippy is in the hood.
Yeah.
And we couldn't find him when we were trying to find Lippy's grave for the first time, and we're wandering. It was us with Tanya Kell, who's the president of the North American Society of Homeopaths, who's our dear friend, and she was visiting, and we decided that on a hot summer day we were going to go find Lippy. And so, as homeopaths do, so we're traipsing around, and it's in such a bad neighborhood that 3 people wandering around in a cemetery, the police came in their vans, and they're driving slowly behind us. And we were like, just looking for the grave of a dead homeopath.
Nothing to see here, officer.
You should have dressed up as Arneman.
Oh,
Did we? It was before we had the outfits.
damn.
We should do that. Oh,
Interesting
okay.
idea.
That's
You
it,
should have said-
July.
But to
You
your
should have said,
question,
you should have said, I'm not from this timeline. That would make sure you're not arrested.
Oh,
Right.
Atik, we're going to do
we're
that.
in the 1830s.
Yeah.
Hello.
Who are you?
We're from the past.
But to your question, no,
We
we
want
don't
it,
have
we want it to be different. We're not from the future. We're from way back.
Past. Like, most people want to see what's going to happen. We're still back here.
Yeah.
Oh, hi.
Yeah.
Hello.
Louisa,
Bonjour.
my corset.
But
We're croissant.
you didn't hear that. But to your question, no, we don't have I forgot his first name, but Tankred Hahnemann. I don't know of a direct descendant.
No. Somebody
But you
needs to do that.
Yeah, Charles is
Charles.
the
Yep.
fourth, isn't he? Fourth great grandson.
Yes.
But yes, interesting. I would be interested if you had information. Sorry to those listening. I know it just seems like we're having a personal conversation. This is the Homeopathy Health Show.
Wait,
Hey, isn't it
we're
fascinating?
not supposed to be doing that? What? There are rules?
No, there are no rules.
Oh,
But it was just interesting. I love that. I love things about lineage. Did Kent, his children, were they aware of?
he didn't have
grandchildren?
kids.
Children.
So Kent
Oh.
never had kids.
No children.
3 wives,
Yeah.
no kids. And a story.
And a
Shall we tell the
story.
story? Yeah, we'll tell the story.
Yeah,
Should
please
we?
share.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
And you
I'll
finish,
start
sorry.
and you finish it. So in the mid 90s and late, in the mid and late 90s, 2 people. One was Klaus Gibser, German homeopath, Vermeulen, and also Julian Winston picked up on it. The homeopathy I learned, from the School of Homeopathy in that day was very Kentian, but I just thought it was homeopathy. And so it was really amazing to hear these speakers say, no, the balance is all wrong. We need to get Berningshausen back in the story.
but Kent was a weird dude.
He
Kent,
was.
if you really, and we do at our school, we really do, one of the things we do is sort of get people to think about who are the players. I love, Atik, that you're interested in, in the history and in the lineages, because there are questions we have to ask about what each of the players brought to the table. And Kent, Kent's first book before he got to homeopathy was called On Sexual Neuroses. And you start to see, the evolution of Kent's repertory and, the ways in which the male and the female sections were, distributed and the language around some of the, I was teaching fluoric acid this week, and and I read them some excerpts from Kent, which are they're shocking in their opinions. Anyway, we digress. That's because Al served us tea called Naughty Vicar.
Yeah, we're drinking the Naughty Vicar.
Yeah,
It's actually from the London Tea Company.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, is it really?
it's really good.
Do you come over? We've totally gone off tangent, but this is brilliant. Oh, do you come over
product
to
placement.
Yes.
I teach for the NCIM, National Centre for Integrative Medicine, based in Bristol, with Dr. Elizabeth Thompson. And every now and again we get there. You used to go there all the time.
Yeah, I used to be there a lot for a while. I taught for CHE.
Oh, brilliant. Marcus and the team.
Yeah, yeah. And then they started a school in New York, which ultimately became AHE. So
That's a
that's
lineage.
part of
That's
the
the
lineage.
lineage. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
interesting. I'm going to ask because Marcus is on in a couple of weeks, so I'm going to ask him
Yeah.
about that. That's interesting. Yeah, again, this is fascinating, isn't it? I love it. Now, before I totally forget to ask you, Denise, what's your story as far as your journey to homeopathy?
I feel like my story is different than most people's because most people find homeopathy because they themselves had a health problem or their children, and then they find this, healing, whatever, especially during the, now it's so much more common. We hear so much more about it, but this was in 1993, and I was about to begin a PhD in clinical psych research. And my research question was basically what happens to the physical body when there's a mental and emotional trauma, or vice versa. If someone has a physical trauma, is there a change to their disposition, to their emotions, whatever, right? And there's a whole story of why that was my interest, but I met someone who said, if you actually think that you will be able to do that here, you're crazy. And I was really surprised. I think I was a bit naive. I was in my 20s. I was like, I'm going to do a PhD and I'm going to ask the things that I want to know. And they were like, no, you're going to be chasing rats around. And I don't really do rodents, so that was another problem. But this woman happened to be her great grandfather studied with Kent. And
Wow.
yeah, and she said, I think you need to look into homeopathy. And I never looked back. So it's actually been, so that was, I guess I started my study in 1994, so 30 years ago.
Mm.
And again, like Al, doing the correspondence course with School of Homeopathy, which then you used to get a packet of papers in a manila envelope and a cassette tape with Misha's voice.
Hello.
Hello.
I used to get cassette tapes. In
Yeah.
fact, I know we upgraded to CDs.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Those are great days.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
that was really, maybe it was it CDs? I kind of, in my mind, they were cassettes, but
Cassettes.
it was a cassette. Yeah.
I just know that the 80s were the best time for everyone on the planet.
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
It depends on the planet where you were.
Oh,
Let me just intervene.
No. It was definitely, are you
Well, it was
kidding?
1953 in New Zealand in 1980.
No.
I love the 80s. I love the 80s.
New
I think
Jersey,
it's just because I
disco.
grew up in the 80s,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Me too.
Hatik, to ask Denise about the 80s in New York. Let's get serious in this podcast.
It has nothing to do with my homeopathy journey, but let's just say I got to be a club kid in New York City in the early 80s. So we can leave it at that.
Wow,
That was fun. That was definitely fun.
fun times.
Hey, I have a question for you, actually. Now, you
Yeah.
mentioned something very interesting, and my question is actually on that as well, that you work on autoimmune conditions, and my question here is, we have these autoimmune conditions which are very prevalent in today's society.
Yeah.
And mental health problems, which
Yeah.
people very much talk about. Is it the fact that perhaps they were always present and they weren't recognized medically, or is it really something to do with the way that life is in modern times?
I'm so glad that you're asking this question because this is where my recent research has been. Because we see so many people who have these complex autoimmune conditions right now, and people are struggling. The statistics show that it takes 4 or 5 visits to an allopathic physician before people get a diagnosis. And if you're a woman, you're labeled as a problem client 80% of the time because people can't, they're not able to find a diagnosis. I think that's starting to change. I think those statistics are probably a decade ago, but even still. And so one of the things I just did a 2-day seminar in Florida back in March, and I spent probably 3/4 of a year doing research into not just the prevalence of the conditions, but I presented, it was all on autoimmunity, but it was, what are we seeing in autoimmunity today? Because autoimmunity isn't just, like it used to be. It was lupus, Hashimoto's, MS, right? But now we're seeing really sort of these weird manifestations of people's inability to live in the world. So things like alpha-gal syndrome, where people are allergic to all of these animal proteins that are found not just in a hamburger, but in the coatings on pills, in monoclonal antibodies, so in baby formula, right, synthetic baby formula. And so I think that some of the ways in which we're living far from nature have started to impact the ways in which we're no longer able to live in harmony with nature. So this idea of like the microbiome, yeah, everybody's excited about taking probiotics or whatever, but it's not just about filling in acidophilus, it's like take penicillin, give acidophilus, but rather starting to see that, so I have to go aside for just a little bit because my research is both really medical and really alchemical. And so, this alchemical idea of as above, so below. But I think that there is as above, so below, as within, so without. In other words, leading up to the 20th and 21st century, so much was about how do we find ourselves? There was a lot about, you listen to people like Joe Dispenza, right? He's one of those, sort of the internet gurus about how we can change our health through meditation and mindfulness and changing our perspective and things. I kind of think that ship has sailed a little bit, because right now the organisms that live within us, we've killed so many of them. And so now what do we do if we have an internal ecosystem that just can't deal with what's outside of us, right? And so you look at something like COVID, which just happened to come on the heels of, all of the biomedicine and all the antibiotics and all this stuff. And you've got people who walked around for years with masks on. You've got people who have decades of antibiotic use and, all of the shutting down of the immune system. And now autoimmunity is a totally complex animal that I don't think is the same as what we saw. Mast cell activation syndrome, where people are basically having idiopathic, in other words, no cause for a huge allergic reaction. That's a problem, and I think, if we pull it back into homeopathy and what we can do, what I've done is, I've anchored it in the premises of homeopathy. And I'm really excited by the fact that Hahnemann gave us a roadmap, right? Hahnemannian homeopathy does the job. You don't need any fancy business systems, none of this stuff. Understanding chronic diseases solves the problem. I think it's the only, it's the only way forward.
Talk about Sydenham and that those precedents, historical precedents you found.
Yeah, so I did this deep dive into pans and pandas. Right. So you've got these kids, pediatric neuropsychiatric syndromes, right? So you've got a kid who one day is doing really well. The next day they are, fully anxious, nightmares, food, not eating foods, having all sorts of things, and having lots of tics and twitches and so forth. So I did a deep dive and realized this goes all the way back to, goes back to the time of Hippocrates, and then comes up to Sydenham's chorea, right? Which Hahnemann talks about Sydenham, I think 6 or 7 times in the Organon, right? And then following it forward, what I've been able to do is look at the evolution of this disease, which over the course of time, see if I could do this in 30 seconds or less. Basically, once we got to biomedicine, they connected it to strep, right? And so once you have strep and then you have antibiotics, then you just give an antibiotic for the strep. If you kill the strep, they thought, well, then that's going to kill the rheumatological issues that come from it, and and pericarditis and so forth, and the issues with the mitral valve. Okay. And then you're theoretically going to stop this progression that leads to Sydenham's chorea. Well, actually what's happening now is that the arc took 100 years, not even, it took 80 years from the introduction of, the standard medicines that are used for group A strep. And now we see kids who are presenting without the vector. In other words, you don't need group A strep to wind up with the symptoms of Sydenham's chorea. So pans and pandas, these kids mostly are showing us the progression of pathology that has been known since the time of Hippocrates, has been documented through, for hundreds, if not thousands of years, but they made a tactical error by using a biomedical solution. In other words, just kill it. Don't look at the whole organism, just kill the thing that you've identified. And now what's happened is you don't need that thing anymore, right? You don't need it. People are developing this with or without strep. Anyway, and it's a circular problem because, of course, the solution is still to give more and more antibiotics, which creates more and more susceptibility, which then exacerbates the problem. Yeah, that's a big example,
that's really, really fascinating. That, and thank you for sharing. Actually, which leads me on to ask you about personalities, because when children are suffering as they are, and so many are, and it can be episodic, like you quite rightly said, or it can just be a gradual increase, or sometimes you can just, that old saying, you just woke up with it, and the parents are saying, but they were absolutely fine, and all of a sudden there's this huge change, and what's going on? It's so serious, isn't it? Because personalities for children change, and they're not their personality. Um, they're masked behind levels of personality, and that's also a worry, because children they're not able to be themselves, whoever they are going to be as such. We're all individual, right? But different personalities come onto that the original personality, don't they? There's layers of personalities, and Jan Scholten mentions this, and I was speaking to him about it as well. And it's so interesting, because when you get sick, it's just like saying, if you've got a migraine, you might become irritable, and you might behave differently. It's a personality, but it's an acute personality trait, isn't it? And then it's gone once the migraine's gone. But these children that are growing up and who are so, dare I say it, carrying such a toxic load, from a young age, it's not their fault. And they've got these personalities, and the personality is stronger than their body can be to take over and say, this is the type of person you're going to be. How do we deal with things like this? As homeopaths, I mean.
Could I weigh in?
Yeah.
What I've been learning from you, because Denise and I've been together for almost a decade, and since you started studying, I've almost done a history of medicine course just by listening to Denise. And so what I've really appreciated is that what you have done in your practice is to essentially deal with these very complex problems, but just by rolling out and applying Hahnemannian principles.
Right.
And it's really interesting because like many of us, certainly spent a bit of time maybe in my mid-career looking around for other solutions, and looking around for, maybe my clients need a bit of this or that. And I tell you what, watching Denise and her, she's very busy. I'm just, because you hide the light under a bushel, so I'll talk about you. She's very busy, and you apply basic homeopathic principles, and I suppose as much as you can, the removal of obstacles.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm so much less fancy about homeopathy than I used to be, like early in your homeopathy career. I mean, I guess for some of the newer folks, because now education is available in, online formats, but we used to get on airplanes and go to fun places to study with the, who's the expert and who's doing that. And we had a lot of fun. It was amazing. But in my dotage in homeopathy, I find that the really simple, like Hahnemann, he figured it out. I mean, Hahnemann basically figured out the elixir of life. Like, he solved a problem no one had been able to solve in history. He did it. And I am amazed by that. And so I say to the students when they're like, I just watched a webinar with the most famous this person and they have this theory, and I say, unless they speak at least 12 languages fluently and it can extract spirit from matter, don't tell me.
What's more extraordinary is the fact that, having moved more than 30 times and suffered ridicule and persecution and being taunted and called all sorts of names, trying to raise a family.
Yeah.
He left us with, I mean, wow, I don't even know where to start. I mean, talk about a gift to humanity, right? Talk about perseverance, talk about commitment.
Yeah.
What a gift. He never gave up, despite those adversities. Someone has to move once with a horse and cart. You'd give up.
Yes.
Not having any money, being called names. It's talk about, nowadays we just have one little argument and you become anxious. What must he have gone through? But what a powerful mind, and what a amazing psyche to be able to say, nope, this is my goal, and I'm going to carry on.
Yeah, tenacity, absolute perseverance, dogmatic perseverance.
He was searching for, he knew what he was looking for from the time he was 22 years old and went to Transylvania. You know, he went to Sibiu, Romania. I got to spend a week in the archives in the basement of a castle, going through the entire list of all the things Hahnemann had access to.
Wow.
Yeah.
You've
Right
got to
before-
send me your autograph. Can you send me a digital autograph? Can you send me a video autograph? Hey,
Oh my
you know, like they do on one of these apps. Hey, Atik, I won't have to pay you for it. You know, tune into the Homeopathy Health Show coming from you.
I love it.
This is great.
Really.
Tell a story, though. Tell a story of the deli gloves.
Oh yeah. So this like to homeopaths, this archive, right, of this, it's about it was about 10 inches tall, and it was folios, right? And it was in the handwriting of this scribe that worked with Hahnemann, and then Hahnemann's corrections and some of his notes and things. And then it was just bound into this, like, I don't know, 8-10 inch tall book, right? This archive. And so like it took days for them to let me in. I'm there like, and I'm like, come on, can I go today? Can I go today? Finally, they let me in. And this woman comes out. I'm in a basement of a castle, and she comes out with this amazing treasure. Like to homeopaths, like we want to get down on our knees. It was wrapped in deli paper, like in brown craft paper, tied with a string. And then they gave me blue deli gloves, like I was going to make a sandwich, to go through this incredible document. Like the first day, I think I just sat there looking at it, like with my, you know, like having a flush. They let Al in one day.
Yeah, just
and the
one
lady
thing.
stared at him. She like, I think she was afraid you were my accomplice and we are going to make off with the
We're gonna
deli
run
gloves
off
or
with it.
something.
Oh, that reminds me of that film with Nicolas Cage, doesn't it? What's it called?
I don't know.
National Treasure,
Oh, right. Yeah.
isn't it? The Declaration of Independence, you know?
Oh, right. Yeah.
It's a good fun film, actually.
I want to watch that again. It's coming up for July.
Well,
here
it's
in America.
you know, it's summertime, so you know, we've got to get into our
Yeah,
routine.
totally.
Yeah. All right. We'll watch that.
Now, tell me, with everything that you've, and we're going off slightly off script as such, if there was such a thing as a script, but
We've been known to ruin a script.
you know, all this information. I mean, do you share this? So for the listeners, I'm asking on their behalf, do you share that you've been to these places and this is what you saw? Because it's so important.
Yeah. So well, we teach all of this to our students. We're really trying to sort of get homeopathy back to, like, I always say, homeopathy, it's a thing. You know, Hahnemann established this system. It's based on the laws of the universe, and it's right there for us. But you kind of, something so magical, you have to work for it, right? Anytime there's an easy shortcut, it's probably a shortcut. It's kind of like saying, give antibiotics for group A strep and it'll solve a problem. Well, it might solve it today, but 80 years down the road, we find that we've got an entire systemic issue that we've caused. And I think there's a little bit of that that's happening with homeopathy. There are a lot of, you know, what Al calls cheap and cheerful shortcuts. And so we share all of this. You know, we want to get you say something that that we say a lot as well, which is to bring up the next generation in homeopathy. I love that. When I heard you say that, I was like, this is my guy.
Engage.
Because we've got to, right? We have to bring these people into it. You need to understand it. And, you know, and I think for people who are sort of finding homeopathy because, you know, it's on Facebook and Instagram and they're influencers. I mean, like, I love the fact that we're getting the word out there, but I also don't want to sort of cheapen what it is, which is, it is amazing. It is a form of medicine that actually has the capacity to unravel the complexities of modern diseases when we do it according to principles. Like, that's how the laws of the universe are. They don't change, you know? And so I think that's really our mission. So we have, if people want to see some of our stuff, the Academy of Homeopathy Education, AHE.online, you can see, you know, an overview of what we do. We provide clinical services. We've got a charity that we started in 2015. It's called Home Foundation. It's spelled HOHM foundation.org. And it's a charity and not-for-profit. And we do a couple things, but the main thing is we provide accessible, really high quality homeopathy. So it's part of the education mission, right? So we've got students in supervision who are learning with their teacher right there. So they're seeing real time this work being done. But also we have a research component with it. And Alastair heads our research office, and every case that comes through AHE in our chronic clinic or through Homeopathy Health Now, which is our telehealth service, every case has an outcomes measure attached to it. So we say, are we good at this? Are we getting results? And our results are really good. It's like in our chronic clinic, over 86%, what is it, 86 point whatever percent of our people are showing improvement. And in our acute clinic, and this includes the COVID data, it was over 84%. So, that is statistically significant progress that clients are making. So we're, even though we're looking at, sort of the boring old homeopathy, it works. Like there's a reason it's been around 230 years because it really works, right?
It's something I picked up on, which both of you said very eloquently, was that homeopathy's already given the answers, and we were talking about autoimmune conditions and personalities, and it's so true, isn't it, to go back to the basics, because sometimes it can become so complicated. I've had so many students, so many people who are interested in homeopathy say, "Oh, we heard this on the show, and it's it really inspired us." And
Yeah.
you were talking about the principles of homeopathy, or you were talking about Hahnemann, or you were talking about, I don't know, belladonna or lycopodium, whatever it is, But it's the basics, isn't it? It's the simplicity. And sometimes we can get overzealous and overexcited and complicate things for no reason whatsoever. I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, exactly.
I have to say that that's where I'm kind of landing. I think my journey in homeopathy has not been a linear straight line. I remember being at Jan Schulten's first lecture, and you mentioned it before, and I've been to plenty of his lectures over the years, but I remember when he said kind of, I'll paraphrase, but he said, "I don't trust the provings, therefore I've developed a system of clinical decision making that is based on this," and then he outlined it. And by the time he got to about 20 minutes, half the people had left the room because there was a big implication, and that was he was heading in a deductive direction, not an inductive direction, which is the fundamentals of Hahnemannian decision making. Like, we will match and apply in a really, in an experiential or empirical way. And so,
that's the shamanistic part of homeopathy. People are going for the spiritual searching in homeopathy, and they go into all these corners, when in reality, right, the shamanistic part of homeopathy is the experiential aspect of approving, right? Aphorism 20. You can't, Hahnemann says you cannot figure out what a homeopathic remedy does by mere intellectual assertions. You must experience in the human body.
Yeah. And it's really interesting because I think, as fairly young in my career, back in those early 90s days, I thought to myself, oh, hang on, there's a person that's taking this in a direction. And, I totally appreciate that, that he's, done what he's done and got his results and got his following and his critical importance in our profession. But it's interesting how in my own journey, I've kind of gone there and then just edged back and edged back and edged back. And now I'm just going, no, homeopathy, it's applied philosophy. Yes, there are remedies, but they are applied in, this kind of very basic and simplistic way.
I think I have to say, because Jan Schulten and I have the same birthday, and Himalaya and Carol Boyce.
Carol Boyce, Himalaya, Denise, and Jan.
Oh, sorry.
No, Dana Altman.
Dana Altman. What am I saying? Dana Altman.
Take that back.
Dana said, Dana and I, we exchange birthday greetings every time. And actually, we took a photo of him and Carol and I, but they were all born the same year. I'm a little younger.
When is that? What month?
December 22nd. So solstice. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. But Jan, I think it's interesting to me, the first question that he must have been asking when he was looking at the periodic table, he's saying there are predictive patterns in nature. Can I do the same thing or something similar to what Dmitry Mendeleev did, right? He was the Russian chemist who perceived the gaps in the sort of understanding of the evolving, knowledge of chemistry, and said, these actually follow a predictive pattern. So, I mean, I think, I always say to the students, we teach this whole module in critical thinking in contemporary homeopathy, materia medica, philosophy and so forth. And I always say, all these great thinkers, there's something in it. There's something we have to listen to because they're asking a really good question. But then you have to say, did they get an answer that's going to push homeopathy forward? Or can I take a nugget from it? What can I learn from it? Right. So I think, when we think about Jan's work, a lot of the sort of speculative materia medica was fine until such time as you have a proving. And then you come into the digital age, and then what do you do? Because it's out there as if it's the final word when there's a proving that might or might not confirm the information. Anyway.
What I absolutely, excuse me, what I absolutely love about homeopathy is that there are times when I'm treating patients and I unnecessarily make it complicated myself, and I'm thinking, and then I step back and I think, hang on a minute, just calm down and just go with take a step back, third person perspective. I love that. I observe myself. I try to anyway, but hang on, don't be silly, for want of a better word. Do this because it's simple and it's straightforward and it works. So why are you doing something which you don't understand, or you're trying to get excited about something? Just make it simple, because at the end of the day, it's about the patient. It's about them finding relief, finding their well-being, finding well-being again and their wellness, and just keep things simple and straightforward. I don't want to complicate things. Because as soon as you start complicating things,
oh, forget it.
Boy, my God, it's challenging, because that's anxiety, right? Because anyway, I worry about my patients at night. It keeps me awake. So, like most homeopaths, right? But I've always found if you just keep it simple, it's beautiful. The results are immediate as well, aren't they? Most of the time, right? For acutes, anyway, let's say.
Yeah.
But even for chronics, it's like you think, oh, it was that. So why did you do that? And then next time you do it again, and you think, calm down, brace yourself,
This is what I love about teaching clinic, doing clinical work, teaching students. It's so much about that, like moving them away from overcomplication. And because we're doing it constantly, right? It just like helps to get you in the mindset of simplification. Jeremy Sher talks about how in Africa, they've got to, he calls it no BS homeopathy, because you're taking cases of people that are, you're out in the bush and you've got only so much time. And I had the same experience. I worked in a homeless clinic, in an outreach clinic in New York City. And, sometimes it would be 10, 15, new intakes a day while they're getting a medical exam. They're having a boil lanced and they're, lying on their side. And I'm like, and, how's your sleep? And they don't even have a house, So this kind of, getting through and just seeing what needs to be cured and then approaching it in a really logical way and following principles. I mean, it works. It's kind of remarkable.
It absolutely does. Just recently, I had very, very recently, I had a woman who was, she said she was just not feeling herself, and that she felt lonely and she felt unloved. And here's me thinking, okay, these are the remedies, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, all of a sudden, no, just give her this, give her a single dose. I gave it to her. She took it and she said, she took it from my hand and it's like, messaged me, went home, and she said, you gave me one tablet. I said, yes. She said, what's that all about? Are you sure? Like, she thought I was a bit mad.
Yeah.
She thought, is this going to help me? I said, have you taken it yet? She said, no. I said, well, take it and then we'll talk in a day. 80% better in 24 hours. And now you think of, that's homeopathy, right?
Right.
And she's totally changed. She's like, you're my counselor now. I can talk to you about anything. I said, it's not the quantity, it's the quality. It's never been about the quantity, but yeah, hey, we got a lot in common anyway.
I love that.
I'll tell you a quick story.
Yeah.
Quick story.
Yes, please do. And that will take us to the end of this part. For the listeners, I'm really excited because there's going to be several episodes with Denise and Alastair, or Alastair and Denise. And I might actually even come up with some more names. So we've gone through dynamic and kinetic and so forth, and strange and peculiar. But now that my mind's ticking, just wait till part 2. But yes, over to you, Alastair.
Well, I'll this is a keep it simple story. Back in the day, and I'll anonymize it a little bit. Is
this the kidney guy?
No, it's that's a great story. No, I was called to a hotel.
Oh, I love this story.
And I was called to a hotel because this I'm going to say, we'll say French, woman was in the presidential suite at one of the finest hotels in Sydney. And she needed her case taken. Now, she was there to sing in the opera house in a week. And it's and I think it was a Sunday afternoon. So I added a 0 to my fee. And anyway, but the point was that I started to take the case, and her voice, she was just getting a little throat infection. And she said, I got the individual symptoms of the throat, what was going on. She said, I've got to cancel, but I've got to cancel by Tuesday. If I'm not gonna sing, it's got to be by Tuesday. And I said, well, how did it start? And then I got this amazing story about her furious response to her boyfriend that had possibly done that and possibly done this, and she had a whole lot of feelings about it. And she put her stiletto through his $200,000 cello, and it went on. And I took the case, and I was really attentive, and I did a great job, and I gave her some lachesis. I thought, here we go, throat infection, lachesis, that'll do. And gave it to her, said, call me in the morning, tell me if you're doing okay. Monday morning, no good. But I was still really confident. And I put a vial of lachesis, I think it might have been 1M, in the hand of a taxi driver, and said, go down to the hotel, give it to the concierge, put it in an envelope, and no change. And it's Monday night. She's got to make the decision on Tuesday morning. I got some supervision. I rang my friend Ken. I said, Ken, you got to help me. This is really important. Who knows where this could go? And he said, well, tell me about the case. And I said, I've got an opera singer who's got a throat infection, and, she's really furious. And he said, what? I said, I've got an opera singer who's got a throat infection. And he said, ever Arjnet, you idiot? I'm sorry, Arjmat, you idiot. And I went,
I love that you repeated the idiot part.
Yeah.
To yourself.
And it was magical, like the impact, same as you just said, 80% better within it touching the tongue, and all good. But there's a story in there, and I think for your listeners and for all of us, about just not getting caught up in the weeds sometimes, and realizing the elegance and the simplicity of what we do. So
not the best job you could possibly have. Like, literally, could you imagine doing anything more fun than homeopathy?
Never. I live and breathe it just like yourselves.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I sleep it as well. Sometimes I wake up and I'm thinking of a patient. Sometimes I wake up thinking of remedies.
Yeah.
And wife asks, what are you thinking about? I think I was just thinking of lycopodium. Say, what? Who's lycopodium? Oh, it's a remedy in a 30C, it's
love it.
So thank you so very much for part 1, and we're going to continue this conversation, of course, in part 2. There's so much to go through, but I have to say, certainly for part 1, it's both of you are extremely inspiring individuals, and collectively you are absolutely a powerhouse of information and knowledge. I'm really humbled and honored that you came on. I know you're going to carry on, but for purposes of this episode, thank you so much for giving up some time, and it's been absolutely brilliant.
Are you kidding? This is so much fun. Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
We
total pleasure.
Yeah. We really appreciate it.
And we'll talk very, very soon, of course.
Sounds good.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care. See you soon.
I do hope you've enjoyed this week's episode of the Homeopathy Health Show. Please do support the show by clicking follow on my socials. Remember, the more exposure the podcast receives, the better for homeopathy around the world. You can find me on Instagram by searching for @like_treatslike, and on both Facebook and TikTok by searching for @like_treatslike. So let's promote the voice of homeopathy on radio and podcast around the world together. Don't forget to visit me online at www.liketreatslike.co.uk and click on the radio and podcast tab. Here you'll be able to see all the guests that have joined me on the show so far, and of course you can stream on demand the latest episode to your mobile, tablet or PC. Until next time, stay safe and take care.